Connexus introductory webinar, and you are all very welcome here. I am glad that you are here. And Jim Martini is co-hosting this with me. Jim is the CEO for Shepherd's House. And if you have questions for Jim, feel free to ask Jim. We will do some question and answer time at the end of this presentation. So I am glad that you are all here, and I think from what Denny tells me, some of you already have a student license, some of you have been using Connexus materials for a while, and at least one of you is just curious about the whole thing and wants to find out more. So I hope that today all of you will be satisfied, and if not, complain to Jim Martini. All right, so are you ready to get started? Let's start up here. I need to make my pictures of the three of us smaller so I can actually see my slides. We are going to be talking about Connexus for a thriving community, or self-propagating character transformation as a normal function of church life. That is a huge part of what Connexus is all about. Those of you that have been thriving license holders, you probably have not heard this before. And part of what we're going to talk about today is how Connexus is an expanded or matured picture of what we always intended thriving to be. And this is our first Joy Stream, and you know the second introductory one will be tomorrow. So let me ask you a question. What if your church or ministry could become places where the weak and the strong, and the young and the old, and the new and the old in the faith, and the stable and struggling could all experience joyful transformation and maturity together as a community? This is what the future needs to look like, where everyone within a local church, a local congregation, a ministry, a program, whatever your setting is, could be places of character transformation where all these different groups could all experience transformation together. And what if this joyful transformation extended out from your church or your ministry to families and neighborhoods, to schools and the workplace, to communities and cultures, and to the entire earth? I mean, I want you to think about that for a little bit, because we're not talking about a small vision. We're talking about a vision for Connexus that is local and global. So how can you be part of this revolution of hope? How can you actually become part of the Connexus movement and bring joyful transformation to your church, your program, or your place of ministry? And this is what we want to talk about today. And this is not how we want you to get started. Don't grab a bullhorn and start annoying the heck out of everybody around you about this great and wonderful program you're thinking about bringing to your local church. That creates overwhelm. And as you know, if you've been around for a while, overwhelming others does not bring them joy. So we've had I've had questions from people in the past that are passionate about seeing character transformation happen in their church, their school, their ministry, their program, or their family. And the first thing they do is grab a bullhorn and start explaining loudly to everyone around them why this is important. We don't want you to do that, and hopefully over the course of these next 2 days, these next 2 Connexus webinars, you'll have a better idea of how to actually launch this. And truthfully, you need to be the change, because Connexus starts with you. I always tell people when they're interested in bringing new programs to their church that they need to be a picture of the kind of change that they want to bring to their church. If we don't really represent a whole lot of change, then people in our church that are in positions of influence, or our Sunday school leaders, or the education directors, or our pastors, they're probably not going to pay much attention to us. So we want you to be the change that Connexus starts with. In this joy stream, you're going to learn about how to, or in the Connexus joy streams, you're going to learn how to lead each Connexus module, including restarting, forming, and belonging. We heard from somebody yesterday who could not understand why they needed to go through training to do this, because they had never watched a training video. They had never done any training whatsoever. And I'm like, that's a little bit scary, because Connexus is different. And in Connexus training, you're going to learn how to facilitate each and every exercise, because in Connexus meetings, no matter if you're doing restarting, forming, or belonging, about 2/3 of every class is spent on exercises. So in the Connexus joy streams, you're going to learn how to do every exercise. You'll understand the overview of each lesson. And to be the change you want to bring, you need to practice each exercise personally and with your Connexus team. We'll talk about that. Now, in our introductory joy streams, we're going to be focusing on a detailed overview of the entire Connexus training flow. We're going to talk about the history and development of Connexus and some real helpful hints for getting started. And we're going to talk about inviting people to our second Connexus introductory webinar to talk about how lasting character change can become a normal part of church life. So what are we going to do today? We're going to talk to you about we're growing, our history, what's new in Connexus, helpful hints, and what's coming. Are you ready to start training? Are you ready? How many of you are ready? Can you raise your hands to say, yes, I'm ready, I want to start?
I got
Martini,
1, 2,
I can
3,
see
4.
his webcam. He's ready.
Most of them raised their hands.
Okay, that's good. You're ready. Most of them raised their hands. I'm going to assume the one that didn't has an iPad.
She does. She just typed in yes.
Oh, good. Okay, you're all ready then. Let's take a look at the Connexus training flow. Now, this is something new. Those of you that have been with us for a while, some of this will be familiar, but we've added a little bit, and I'm going to spend a lot of time explaining this. The Connexus training flow starts with the new book, Joy Starts Here. Joy Starts Here was written by Jim Wilder, Chris Corsi, Sheila Sutton, and me, and it was released last October. Joy Starts Here is a study group for everyone that's designed to be used by everyone in your church or your ministry. Those of you that started with us in Thriving back in 2007, we started off with Restarting, which was primarily a recovery module. And one of the issues that came up because of that we'll talk about is the Thriving program kind of got pigeonholed as just a recovery thing, and it did not appeal to everyone in the church. So we want you to know that we want everyone in your church to be involved, and Joy Starts Here is designed as a study group for everyone. You will find out a lot of details about how that works in our webinar, our second Intro Connexus webinar. But Joy Starts Here is for the weak, the strong, the people with addictions, the people that have been walking with Jesus for years and years and years. And it is set up so that you need absolutely no training whatsoever to launch your group. Now, everyone that completes Joy Starts Here, because of the wonderful assessments in Joy Starts Here that you'll find out about tomorrow, moves to either the Restarting module, which is a recovery module, or moves to Forming, which is a spiritual formation model. You'll find out detail about both of these tomorrow. But Joy Starts Here starts off getting people to think about high joy environments and backgrounds and low joy environments and backgrounds. People who primarily discover through the assessments, and Joy starts here, that they may live or have lived in a low joy background and have low joy issues like addictions and trauma and abuse and painful relationships will want to go through restarting, which is a joy-based environment. It is high joy, where all the elements needed for transformation are included. People that discover they are from more high joy backgrounds and environments, they may want to go to forming, where they're going to work intentionally about growing a deeper, more interactive relationship with Jesus. All the elements needed for transformation are in forming as well. Now, after people have completed restarting and forming, and by the way, you're going to want to run these simultaneously. One of the things we learned over the years in doing restarting groups, there are somewhere around 150 restarting licenses. And one of the things we learned is if you just do restarting without forming, you will get some change, but you won't get the kind of deep, lasting character transformation that we describe in Joy Starts Here. So you're going to want to run restarting and forming simultaneously, because when you're done, the people that have completed those are going to come together in belonging, where you have people from high joy and low joy backgrounds coming together and interacting with tender regard for weakness, and where Emmanuel Shalom maintains peace. And in belonging, we are going to grow a thriving community where we all learn the relational skills needed to create community and a place to belong around us. So if you have never been exposed to Connexus, this is the first time you're seeing this, and you'll want to tune in tomorrow to our part 2, because we're going to go into this in more detail. Those of you that have been around the Thriving Recover Your Life program for a while, you can see that Joy Starts Here has been added to help bring the entire church together so that we can simultaneously run restarting and forming groups from Joy Starts Here attendees that will grow the kind of connections and community and belonging that maximizes change. In Connexus, we are creating a culture of transformation to grow the transformation zone, and these are laid out in a lot of detail in Joy Starts Here. The culture of transformation in Connexus includes a joyful, multi-generational community. Look, this is not about the young people sitting in the back texting during church and the old people sitting there going, why are they texting in church? This is about learning how to come together in joy, multi-generational, to intentionally build joy and I'm glad to be with you skills. A culture of transformation includes an Emmanuel lifestyle where we are learning the interactive presence of Jesus as the place where we want to live, as we're learning to interact with him as we go throughout our day. And the last aspect of a culture of transformation are learning to grow the relational brain skills that we need to connect with God and with each other at ever deeper and life-giving levels. Now that culture allows the transformation zone to grow. And in the transformation zone in Connexus, the weak and the strong are together and interacting. That means the people who have problems and the people that don't think they have problems are together and interacting. That means that everyone, the weak and the strong, are learning to treat their own weakness and each other's weakness with tenderness. And the interactive presence of God is maintaining peace for all of us. This culture of transformation and the transformation zone are woven together completely throughout the entire Connexus flow, starting in Joy Starts Here. So that's the overview we really want you to catch. Now, you remember, those of you that have been around a while, that we have been known as Thriving Recover Your Life in the Thriving program. But the truth is that we are growing. everything grows and matures, and so has thriving. So let's take a look at thriving and how it's matured into Connexus. Let's do a short little history so you understand our overview. Tall oaks grow from little tiny acorns, and the beginning of thriving started in 2003, because in 2003 Jim Wilder, Chris Corsi, and I met in Canada at a trauma workshop. And as soon as my wife Maritza and I heard Jim teach about trauma, we knew that what Jim was teaching was the piece that we felt addiction recovery had been missing for years. And immediately I started trying to figure out, how do we apply this? How do we apply this? And I had some emails and conversations with Jim Wilder over the years. But in 2005, Jim and I began talking after a conference about how can we create something new that was designed for the recovery community that could be used in local churches, programs, and ministries. How could we take the kind of conference-based training that the Thrive training program was using and simplify it and export it so that it could be used by people wherever they were? And we designed Thriving to be used in churches and programs and ministries. Now, the Thriving training flow was always intended to include the weak and the strong together interacting. It's why we created Restarting and Forming and Belonging. This has been something that's been in our heart and been something we've structured from the beginning. The original program design include Restarting, Forming, and Belonging, as well as several other modules that we have not yet completed but have worked on. Restarting was the first Thriving module that was released in 2007, and it is still designed for participants from low-joy environments who struggle with issues related to addictions and trauma and abuse and painful relationships. Now, it's important that you know that Restarting includes a culture of transformation in each element of the transformation zone. Now, we said that Restarting is designed for people from low-joy environments that are struggling with issues, but truthfully, any time you get people together, some of us will have stronger skills in some areas than others. For example, one person in a Restarting group may be really good at handling anger, and somebody else may not be. But the person who has a hard time with anger is good at handling sadness, whereas the other person just falls into a deep, dark hole when they're sad. So even when we're working with people from low-joy environments, we are still mixing weak and strong together with tender regard for weakness, where Emmanuel Shalom is maintaining peace. Joy-based relational recovery and an entirely new approach to addiction and trauma were available in Restarting for the very first time. And one of the things that was so revolutionary about Restarting when it began was it was not educational. It was not primarily designed to be an educational program where you just learn new information. And it wasn't a traditional recovery program where everybody talked about how bad their day was or how good their day was. In Restarting, we are actually spending 2/3 of our time training participants, and participants are training with the skills needed to grow the relational skills they need to overcome addiction and trauma. So Restarting was revolutionary. Now, we had a little problem with our beginnings because the squirrel started eating the tiny little acorn. And because Restarting was our first module, Thriving became associated or synonymous with a recovery program. And the vision of Thriving Recover Your Life as a comprehensive program to grow the transformation zone and create a culture of transformation for everyone in families, schools, communities, and churches was missed. We emphasized the recovery part first because that's the part that was released first. But it has always been much, much more than that. And we've discovered over time that the absence of the involvement of the larger church program and ministry community has kept some restarting groups from actually becoming the effective agents of change that we have always wanted them to be. Now, belonging was the second module that was released in 2010. It is where restarting participants went when they finished restarting. It continues the transformation journey by helping participants learn the essential relational skills they need to create a joyful place for others to belong with them. And it was designed for participants from both restarting and forming to participate in together, although when we released belonging, forming was not yet finished. Now, our results with restarting were good. Our results with belonging were good, but we missed the people from forming. So forming was released in 2011. It was written by David Tackle, and it is the second entry-level module in the Thriving Training Program. It is a spiritual formation program that targets participants whose primary need is to grow a deeper and more interactive relationship with Jesus. And the forming program is based on the idea that as we interact with Jesus and connect with him more deeply, he starts to change our hearts and our character by grace from the inside out. And forming is designed for participants who are not wrestling with low joy issues. It also contains all the elements of the T-zone, the transformation zone, and a culture of transformation. So what we had was the recovery element first, the belonging was released second, and then forming released third. Now, we were very happy when forming was released, but all along the way we were asking ourselves these questions. Is the Thriving program working as well as we want it to? What problems are Thriving facilitators having, and what do they need, and how can we best convey the entire vision of Thriving? We became very, very intentional about asking these questions and trying to find answers after forming was released, particularly in 2012. We went to several meetings with multiple facilitators, people that had really been doing this for a while, understood what they were doing, and were well trained to do it. And we began asking them what kind of problems they were having, what kind of feedback we needed, and their answers were incredibly helpful. Because as we listened, we discovered several things. And the first is we needed to do a better job at facilitator training. We had facilitator training DVDs and workbooks, which were good, and some people came to live training events that I hosted. But by and large, most of the 150 licensees for restarting, and I think it's, Jim was telling me the other day, 180 some, 190 of the other ones, needed better facilitator training because they didn't really have much formal training. We also discovered that Thriving was being viewed by most people as primarily a recovery program. Even the name Thriving Recover Your Life, people associated with, well, that's for people, that's for those people over there that just have those problems and usually meet in the basement. Why are they here? It was mostly viewed as that, and so it was becoming pigeonholed as a recovery program, and that meant that we weren't drawing the entire community to get involved with Thriving the way that we wanted. And our vision for church as an ongoing source of character transformation for everyone was getting lost in the shuffle. We also realized that we needed to do a better job of introducing and explaining the training flow to new attendees, but getting new attendees oriented to the individual modules when they showed up for groups. And we also discovered that there was ongoing confusion between Thrive Training, which is led by Chris and Jen Corsi, and the Thriving Recover Your Life program. So as Jim and I and the Shepherd's House board talked about all this stuff, we're trying to figure out how could we best address these issues and these needs before we went on about creating more modules, but didn't solve these problems first. So we pondered the solutions, we looked for solutions, we pondered the problems, we studied hard, we talked a lot, and we celebrated the amazing growth of Thriving. Because there were about 150 group licenses sold for restarting, forming was growing, belonging was creating communities, and it's so much fun for me to hear all the stories of lives that have been changed. Maritza and I visited one of the groups that we trained leadership for in Florida a couple months ago, and one of the people leading it now told me that he had been a crack addict for years. Sorry about that. My Google Calendar likes to be intrusive. But anyway, he was telling me about how he had been a crack addict for years. He was homeless on the street. He'd been in and out of residential treatment programs and mental hospitals. But that since he started restarting and the Thriving program at his church, he was sober. He's now been sober for 3 or 4 years. He had just been promoted to a manager in the place that he worked, and he's now his family's working for him, and he's now helping lead Restarting. I mean, it's just amazing. So we did some celebrating too while we were trying to answer those questions. But we also worked diligently to discover how we could better convey our vision, train facilitators, prepare new Thriving participants, and end the confusion between Thrive and Thriving. And then, boom, it hit. We had several ideas. And here's the first one. Joy starts here, the transformation zone. As Jim and I talked about the need for clear vision, and to introduce the entire church to the process of transformation that Thriving was designed to bring about, and to prepare participants and facilitators to better understand the training flow, we needed to create something new. And as Chris Corsi became involved and Sheila Sutton became involved, that evolved into a book called Joy Starts Here, the Transformation Zone, where we lay out in great detail about why joy and high joy environments are so essential for change, why the culture of transformation is so important, and how you can begin to create the transformation zone in a local church. We also wanted to make this simple enough that anybody could do this without requiring a whole lot of training. So Joy Starts Here, you will find out tomorrow, is set up with individual exercises, group exercises, Bible studies, assessments, and weekly joy activities for the entire church. Joy Starts Here explains the culture of transformation and the elements needed for ongoing change in the transformation zone. And it is for everyone in the church, and we want everybody in your church, your community, your ministry to become a joy starter wherever they are. Now, Joy Starts Here focuses on helping create the T-zone at home, church, and school, because those are the areas that most impact the next generation. Those are the places that basically form and shape the development of the next generation. Joy Starts Here is also the new entry-level study group that prepares participants for the Thriving program. So Joy Starts Here is huge, and we are like completely ecstatic about Joy Starts Here being released. And we are now about to embark on the official Joy Starts Here tour that introduces your community to Joy Starts Here and can also help your group, your church or your ministry do a Joy Starts Here group launch. So you will definitely want to contact Jim Martini to find out how you can be a part of that. But we also decided that we needed to change the name of Thriving Recover Your Life because it was too easily confused with Thrive. So our second idea was to clearly distinguish Thrive Training from Thriving and to remove the recovery label that became attached to Thriving. So Thriving Recover Your Life needed a new name. So Thriving Recover Your Life is now Connexus for a thriving community. So for those of you that have never heard of Connexus, Thriving is now the name that shall not be spoken. No, I'm just kidding. Thriving can still be spoken, but we are now known as Connexus for a thriving community, and in the coming months you will see the launch of a new Connexus for a thriving community website. So stay tuned because that's going to be pretty exciting. Now here was our third idea. We needed to improve our facilitator training. If our groups are going to catch this vision of transformation for their church and community, and if the facilitators are going to work better with teaching exercises and leading their groups, we needed to do a better job of preparation. So the first thing we came up with was online training. To better equip Connexus facilitators to lead restarting, forming, or belonging, we are introducing interactive online training and interaction with me. I am doing the official restarting and forming training starting next Wednesday. So if you are new to this, or have a student license, you will want to participate in these. This training is going to equip facilitators to lead all three Connexus modules, and it also provides you and other facilitators the opportunity to interact with me about any problems or questions that you might have. This is huge because it is incredibly time-consuming answering tons of emails from people that have questions. The other thing is, if Denny or I don't understand your question right, we may not answer it, and it may lead to multiple emails and all kinds of time. So you will now have a monthly opportunity, at least once a month, to interact with me about questions. And if you are taking the Connexus module training for 12 weeks, you will have the opportunity to ask me about any questions you have about any of those modules. The other thing that's new this year is the Pastor's Weekly webinar is now becoming the Roundtable. And it also provides a forum for interaction with other Connexus facilitators. If you're familiar with that format, it usually involved Chris hosting with a guest who would do some kind of teaching, but we're changing the format. This was Jim Martini's idea, and I hate to say it, it might make his head get too big for your screen, but it was brilliant because this is now your forum to ask other facilitators questions. Yes, it did get big. There it is. It gives other facilitators the chance to share what's working for them, have you interact with them. Instead of us being the people with all the answers, this is your chance to build some synergy online on a regular basis with other facilitators. I mean, how are they running a successful group? What tips do they have? What's working for them? What can you ask them about how to improve your group? This is what we're growing here, and this is exciting. This is a part of the new facilitator training. The other part of the training is attending live facilitator training because we want to train your brain with the relational skills that you need to succeed. So facilitators are also welcome to attend live Joy Starts Here, Connexus, or Thrive training events to grow your personal and leadership skills. Truthfully, the best way for you to lead a group is to grow the skills that you're trying to teach your participants. If you don't model them, their brain's not going to be terribly convinced of the importance of the exercise. And live facilitator training is the best forum for you to grow your own relational skills. And we want to equip you to grow the relational brain skills, to grow joy, facilitate your groups, and create transformation wherever you go. I mean, this is cool because once you start learning these skills, the world becomes your playground. You can practice growing joy and creating belonging when you're standing in line at Walmart, when you're standing in line at the drugstore, when you're waiting to get your car fixed. I exercise in a warm water pool a lot for some therapy for my back, and I love to create belonging and meet new people when I'm doing that. I am always talking to new people there. Once you grow these skills, you can create belonging and joy wherever you go, and that's the kind of facilitator we'd like you to be. Connexus training, whether you're doing it online or whether you're doing it in person, helps you succeed and helps your group succeed. So let's talk about helpful hints to get you started. These are just ground rule basics. One of the basic principles I always have is work with a team. It is possible to lead a Connexus group by yourself, but it is much better to have at least one other person working with you. There is strength in a team. And before leading each weekly Connexus lesson, you want to attend the online training webinar for the week that you're about to lead. Don't do the training for week 3 after you've already taught week 3. Okay, you've got it backwards. Watch each DVD lesson ahead of time. Study the facilitator notes in your workbooks and the exercise instructions for each lesson, because you're going to have to explain those to the group. And if you read these through ahead of time and you don't understand them, ask me during our online training sessions. You want to practice and apply each exercise to your life and with your team before trying to teach them to your group. What this means is kick the tires a little bit before you try to teach the other people in your group to do this. Learn how the exercises work and practice them. And familiarize yourself with the wise thoughts about group rules for each module. You will find those at the beginning of each workbook. Sometimes people ask, well, how do we set up our meeting room? And the good news is that Connexus is very flexible. Now, for running, restarting, forming, or belonging, you're going to need a room with a TV and a DVD player. The good news about Joy Starts Here is there are no videos, so you don't need a TV and a DVD player. You do want to have seating that participants can move during exercises, because most of our exercises are done in groups of 3 to 5 people in restarting, forming, or belonging. So you're going to want people to be able to move their chairs so they can face each other. Now, if you're meeting in a church sanctuary, that is not a problem as long as people can turn around and talk to each other and sit next to each other. Don't have people from 5 pews away trying to do an exercise together, because they'll be yelling, and that doesn't grow joy for anybody. But as long as you know that people need to be able to talk in small groups and your room is set up that way, you'll be fine. In belonging, you're going to need round tables or tables of some kind, and we'll talk about that in belonging training. You're going to want a room that is reasonably quiet for exercises. When we were running our test programs, we made a mistake. We practiced one night in a room where we could hear the choir practicing for Sunday, working out their harmonies, and it brought joy to no one, especially because we were doing an Emmanuel exercise where we were learning to listen to Jesus, so that made it kind of difficult. So you want a reasonably quiet room. Now, it doesn't matter if you set your chairs up theater style or in a circle, as long as all participants can see and hear the TV and you, and get together in groups for their exercises. You always want to create a welcoming environment of hospitality. That starts off with greeting each person when they arrive. You don't want to be busy setting up chairs when people are getting there. You want to greet each participant as they arrive. And if the meeting room is somewhere in the maze of your church, you want directions to the meeting room or have somebody there to meet people and direct them. Name tags are a great idea. Now, sometimes people wonder, well, should we have refreshments? The answer is whatever you want to do. Refreshments can create a feeling of welcome, but they are not required. You do want to avoid large amounts of high sugar and high fat snacks. You want to have, if you're going to have coffee or tea or soda or whatever, you're going to want to have non-caffeine, non-sugar, and healthy options available as well. You can also ask your group to donate or bring snacks. That's a good way for them to practice some joy skills. What you want to do is avoid this. We do not want to provide large quantities of joy substitutes to participants from low joy or even high joy environments. Now, you may laugh about that, but I was doing a training one time after Halloween, and people brought leftover candy. And we were doing a lot of work, and I went to look at because there were huge quantities of candy, and it was all eaten. People were getting a little bit anxious, and they just began gobbling sugar after sugar, gulp after sugar after sugar after sugar. So you kind of want to avoid this. People that already struggle with self-control issues related to low joy do not need that kind of temptation you're looking at there. So for planning your Connexus group, where do you begin? You'll want to begin with Joy Starts Here. Now, I know a lot of people have begun with restarting, and that's still all they're doing. The problem with that, like I've said, is you are not pulling in people with maybe more maturity or people from stronger high joy environments. You want to get your entire church, program, or ministry community involved. So start with a Joy Starts Here group, because Joy Starts Here will have weekly exercise that generate discussion about elements of the transformation zone, and because they contain assessments in each chapter, participants are going to assess their own readiness for transformation as well as their family, school, and church. And if you help people learn to use their assessments correctly, they will then decide whether they need to go to forming or restarting after Joy Starts Here is finished. We'll talk about this tomorrow, but you want to begin identifying people who will lead forming and restarting while Joy Starts Here is still meeting. Don't wait till it's over. You want to start preparing weeks before it's done so that you can move seamlessly. 1 week finishing Joy Starts Here, and the next week you're starting forming and restarting. Remember to play and to have fun. We used to do this with my groups, and we discovered, because they told us, that the time we played and interacted together and ate together outside group meant more to them sometimes than being together in groups where we're doing our exercises. So always remember to play and have fun. And if you're wondering who these people are, on the left you are seeing Maritza, that's my wife. There's me. There's Jim Wilder. There's Chris Corsi and Sheila Sutton. And Sheila, Chris, Jim, and me are the authors of Joy Starts Here. And here is our ever-popular snowman, which we had a lot of fun putting together, and he's a thriving snowman. You can see his hat. He's also very cool. You can see the glasses. So make sure you play. Communicate with your church that this is beginning, and we're going to talk about that a little bit now and a lot more tomorrow. You want to identify the key decision makers in your church community. These could be your pastors, your program leader, your education director, or the influencers in your church. Influencers are the people that make things happen. They may not be, they're the instigators, as Jim Martini calls them. They're the agitators. They're the people that get things to happen. Okay? You want to identify those people in your community and share this vision, share these webinars with them. You want to share your heart and vision for Connexus with them, invite them to find out more about Connexus, and attend these introductory webinars with you. remember, be the change that you want them to support. Now, if you overwhelm them, like the person on the bullhorn at the beginning of this webinar that we talked about, they're probably not going to listen to you. But if you are starting to grow some of the skills for yourself, you will be a good agent for change in your community. And even if you don't have the connections with your pastors or program leaders or education directors, the influencers probably do. We heard from a woman yesterday that my wife has been working with for a while that I've met. She's an awesome lady. She wanted to bring this to her church, and I suggested grow some relationship with your pastor. So she and her husband started hanging out a little bit with their pastor and growing some relationship with them. And she told us yesterday, her pastor said, "What do you see that we could do at our church that we're not doing now?" And she said, "I am so glad you asked. Here is Joy Starts Here. Take a look at it and let's talk." And that's exactly the kind of thing that we want to encourage you to do with your pastors, program leaders, education directors, your small group leaders, your home church leaders, or the influencers in your church. Ask those people to attend the second introductory Connexus webinar with you, and that is tomorrow at the same time. It is at noon. Now, you're going to also want to visit www.joystartshere.com to find out about future Connexus webinars, because these introductory webinars are going to be recorded and can be ordered later at any time. So you and those key influencers and decision makers in your church can go back through this together. So if you're wanting to do that, and you can't attend the live event tomorrow, make sure you find out from the website when these will be posted and available for order. So I am sure that you have questions now. We have about 10 minutes left, so let's open it up for questions.
So that means raise your hand so I can unmute you. We only have a few people here today, so it shouldn't be too chaotic. If I unmute a bunch of people, it should be fine.
And you are also welcome to ask Jim Martini questions too from Shepherd's House. If you have licensing questions, or if you want to talk about influencers, Jim Martini is your guy. So questions.
The wait for the first person is always so much fun.
While we're waiting for questions, I want to just give a shout out to Richard and Joel Brenneman from Greencastle, Pennsylvania. Hi, and thank you for your financial support. We definitely appreciate that. I'm glad you're on the call with us. Nancy Henry from Tucson, same again. The financial support really helps. We appreciate that, and thanks for all you're doing, all the instigation that you do in Tucson. Margaret Macklin, I think you're the Margaret Macklin that is married to George, if I'm correct. Had a great call with him this week with some great information, so appreciate that. And Cheryl and Helen, I haven't met you two yet. I'm looking forward to that. At least I don't think I've met you. Maybe you were in Morton. I don't know. So welcome. Glad to have all of you on the call.
Let me see if I had some other questions from earlier. No, they were all technical.
Well, I'll give you a few little...
I have one. Okay, we've got a couple coming in. I'm going to see if I can unmute Margaret. Margaret, are you there? I hear voices.
Yes, hi.
You can go ahead and
Hi
ask
there.
your question.
Pardon?
You can ask your question.
Oh, my question is there a way to use portions of the book, like photocopying an assessment and discussing it that way with a small group that's already together, sort of to jumpstart the process to get people involved in, interested in the whole process, to sort of give them a sneak preview?
Let me let you in on a secret. Can you keep a secret?
I'll try.
Okay, here it is. The assessments in the Joy Starts Here book are going live online in the coming months.
Great.
So and they will be available. It's going to be simple enough, from what I'm told, that you will be able to access them from your phone, from your iPad, which means right there in the living room or the coffee shop or wherever you are, you can pull this thing up and go through it with anybody you want to. So that is coming in probably the next 2 or 3 months. Is that right, Jim?
You're muted, Jim.
Yeah, that's right, but don't wait. I should be unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good.
Okay. That's true. That's coming soon, but don't wait. If you are doing it on a small personal basis and are not benefiting from it in any financial manner, you are free to make several photocopies of the assignment from your book.
That's great.
And to use it as a way to introduce people to join you in a group where they will ultimately purchase the book and go through all of it with you. As a matter of fact, that's such a good idea that I've been thinking about taking a few of the assessments and putting them on the website and doing some things on my Twitter account and on Facebook to kind of encourage people to, hey, you want to check your joy level, and have the the first assessment there for people to grab as a PDF to take a look at. So yes, I encourage you to do that. It's good creative thinking. And as a matter of fact, there was someone who was explaining to me how, in his opinion, Joy Starts Here sounded kind of fluffy, and he was in a men's group. They were men. And I said, well, that's great. You know what I think you should do? You should photocopy week 2, the pseudo joy assessment, and you should have the men, take that and see if something that would help them with all that pseudo joy they're doing is something they'd be interested in, even being manly men like they are. And so, yes, I think that's a great idea.
All right, great question. All right, Margaret, you can mute yourself, and that way you can come back on if you have another question later. I'm going to move on to Cheryl. Let's see if Cheryl can be unmuted. I know she was on where is it? Unmute. Let's see if Cheryl, are you there? Cheryl? I'm hearing little sounds.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay. It looks like she has muted herself, actually. So I will read her question. So she says, so what I hear you saying is that we should... Oh, there you are.
I'm here. Finally, I figured it out. I'm so low-tech challenged.
Well, you did it.
That's okay.
Yay! Okay, I'm really excited about this whole process. I have been working on Thrive material for several years and been doing it in my life and my husband's life, and when we've learned a lot of process and we've been sharing it with others, I haven't been able to start a belonging or a living from the heart Jesus gave you yet because we do so much traveling. But as we've been traveling, we've been sharing a lot about what God has done in our life through this whole process and actually done exercises with people. And it's been amazing to see God change people in an instant, and they look at you like with tears in their eyes going, I can't believe this works. Why didn't everybody tell me how this could work? And I'm like, that's because it's just the Lord's bringing it now, so let's enjoy it now. So what my question is Joy Starts Here a better beginning than going through living from the heart Jesus gave you?
Yes.
Okay.
Joy Starts Here was designed particularly to be used in groups and classes, whereas Life Model was not.
Okay.
Joy Starts Here has joy starting activities for every week. It's got individual exercises, group exercises, and a Bible study. And it is a great way to involve everybody in your community.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
well,
if I were just to add on a little bit, the Living from the Heart Jesus Gave You was written 15 years ago before the brain science was a part of it. It definitely resonates with a lot of people. It has the maturity charts. And by the way, we do have the 15th edition out, which has a a built-in study guide now, and has been, some parts of it have been updated. But what many people experienced when first getting and reading that book was, okay, this is what it should look like, but it doesn't look anything like this. What can I do? And it wasn't a lot of practical, what can I do? Now, there's a little nuance around Joy Starts Here. It can be a little bit overwhelming like that if you read it by yourself. So we strongly recommend that people go through it in groups, that's how they have their experience with it, because it's really those exercises, more than anything else, that make the difference. So very, very much think that the starting point for anybody now is Joy Starts Here. But most importantly, since all of this is relational, the starting point is being with others. And they don't have to be formal groups. You know, there's teachers that get together at after class is out once a week to go through it together. There's, small groups of friends that go through it together, and then there's formal, small groups that do it.
Right.
All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Good job.
You're
It's a
welcome.
perfect segue to Richard's question, actually. Let me see if Richard can be unmuted. Richard, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hello.
You hear me?
Yes, we do.
Okay. The question is, how would you suggest that Joy Starts Here could be begun in a church in an entry way when the church has already been through some incredible upsets and changes, and their capacity to even think about something new is questionable?
Without asking you to go into great detail, I can't, I'm not going to do, and you shouldn't do in a webinar format. It's hard to answer that. What I can tell you is that Joy Starts Here is a blueprint for how everything can change. How an entire church and community can become focused on creating a culture of character transformation that is a normal part of church. Most church upsets happen because somebody in the church was not experiencing character transformation in a leadership position and crashed and burned, or the church was set up around the kind of don't ask, don't tell about dysfunction, so it became a very low joy environment. Churches that are growing, are becoming healthy, actually are creating a culture of transformation and want real genuine character transformation to become a part of what they do. And one of the things I love about Joy Starts Here is in chapter 1, in the first, after the first person story, which I think is mine, we talk about why this is grace-based. Because change happens in response to grace. So a church that's been hurt needs a response that's very grace-filled, and this is.
Thank you.
We are doing a small group with a few of the people in our home.
Great.
And it's multi-generational, so we're hoping that is planting some seeds. And
Good.
we are personally well received, so we thank
Awesome.
God for that.
Great.
All right.
Thank you for your question.
Yeah, and that is the
Thank
last
you.
of our questions.
Well, let me make two comments, if I may, before we wrap up. As Ed mentioned, we are doing the roundtables, so I welcome all of you to participate in those roundtables. Watch your email next week for information on the next roundtables, as we're going to break up into several. Secondly, just a little teaser out there. Ed talked a little bit about Thrive, but be ready to see the new Thrive Club. That's all I'll say for now, but be ready. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be a new, fresh approach, and I think you'll be delighted to see what comes of it.
Awesome. Do we get like Mickey Mouse ears or something to join the Thrive Club?
THRIVE, da 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 da.
That's right.
I'm a thriver.
No, T-H-R-I-V, God and you and me. Growing joy. Growing joy. Growing joy. All right.
Alrighty.
Sorry.
Their next
like to
debut
play.
for singing will be tomorrow at noon Eastern.
Well, thank you all very much for attending the first introduction to Connexus Joy Stream. We are so glad you participated with us. And if you were listening to the recording of this, you will catch up with me before you know it in a live interactive, you can ask Ed question Joy Stream. So it will be good to talk to you then, and I hope all of you that are here with me today will be back tomorrow for part 2.
Yep. You'll need to make sure that you purchase that one if you haven't already, because it is a separate entry. So.
And by the way, this is the one you want to have your decision makers at, your influencers, your agitators, your program leaders, your education directors, your pastor, your small group leader, your house church dude or dudette. Those are the people you want to invite to the second one with you.
All right.